Have you ever dealt with someone who just doesn't get it? The kind of person who constantly interrupts you, drops those passive-aggressive remarks, or treats your time, energy, and feelings like they don't really matter? You're not imagining things. And no, you're not being too sensitive. There are people out there who test boundaries, not because they don't understand them, but because they want to see how far they can push you without consequence. And society? Society often tells us to be the bigger person. Smile through it, shrug it off, don't cause a scene. But let me ask you something. How's that working out for you? If you're anything like me, you've probably walked away from those encounters feeling frustrated, disrespected, and maybe even questioning yourself. That ends now. Because this isn't a video about losing your temper or calling people out in public. This isn't about getting even or turning cold. It's about something much more powerful, holding your ground. It's about setting boundaries in silence, asserting your worth without a single raised voice, and teaching people exactly where the line is drawn, without ever stepping out of character. And the best part? You don't have to change who you are. You don't need to be louder, meaner, or more aggressive. You just need to understand how to respond with purpose, with control, and with self-respect. Because when someone disrespects you, you only have two choices. Let it chip away at your peace, or decide that your peace is too sacred to be compromised. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 brutally honest, deeply effective ways to handle people who don't respect you. No drama, no shouting, no apologies, just calm confidence, and the tools to make sure no one ever crosses your line again. So take a deep breath. You're about to reclaim your energy, your dignity, and your space. Let's begin. Let's kick things off with one of the most underrated but powerful tools you have, the silent stare. Now, I know what you're thinking. Seriously? Just stare at them? That's it? But trust me, this one's a game changer. It's subtle, it's sharp, and it throws people completely off balance. Here's the thing. People who disrespect you, whether they talk over you, belittle you, or throw little jabs your way, aren't always trying to communicate. What they're often doing is performing. They're playing a role. They want a reaction out of you, maybe to make themselves feel more dominant, more clever, or more in control. And when you react, when you flinch, stammer, defend yourself, they win. You've joined their script. But when you give them a calm, unwavering stare, you take that script and toss it right out the window. You're not being passive-aggressive. You're not being confrontational. You're just there, present, still, unmoved, and it is wildly unsettling. Let me give you an example. I was once in a group meeting with someone who, for whatever reason, kept talking over me. Every time I tried to speak, he'd jump in, cut me off, steamroll the conversation like it was his personal TED Talk. At first, I tried to be polite, waiting my turn, interjecting gently, but it didn't matter. He was on a roll, and I wasn't part of his agenda. So I stopped. I leaned back in my chair, folded my arms, and just looked at him. Not glaring, not rolling my eyes, just still. 5 full seconds, no blinking, no expression, nothing, and I could literally feel the energy in the room shift. He paused, then stumbled over his words, then looked around, and then he looked down. And for the rest of that meeting, he didn't interrupt me once. I never raised my voice. I never told him to stop. But that silent stare said everything. It said, I see what you're doing, and I'm not playing this game with you. It said, you don't get to bulldoze me and pretend it's normal. It said, I don't need to speak to take up space. And most importantly, it reminded me, not just him, of who I am. Because that's the deeper power of the silent stare. It's not just about them. It's about you. See, when someone disrespects you, your first instinct might be to explain yourself, to speak up, to correct them, and sometimes, that's necessary. But other times, the most powerful thing you can do is absolutely nothing. Not because you don't care, but because you care too much about your peace to let it be pulled into nonsense. When you hold that calm, steady eye contact, you're telling yourself, I'm not shaken, I'm not shrinking, I belong here. You're reclaiming your ground, without saying a word. And here's the part people don't talk about enough. People who are used to getting away with disrespect rarely face real-time accountability. They're used to brushing it off, getting a laugh, or being ignored. But that silent stare? That's a mirror. And not everyone likes what they see. It forces them to sit in the discomfort of their own behavior. To feel the weight of what they just did, without you lifting a finger. And you know what else? That stare stays with them. Even after the moment has passed. Something about the stillness lingers. It sticks. Because it's not about humiliation. It's about clarity. The message is simple. I see you. I'm not moved by you. And you don't have access to my energy. I'll be honest, learning to do this wasn't easy for me. I used to laugh off rude comments. Try to explain myself. Try to make people like me. And every time, I left the interaction feeling smaller, drained, and unsure of myself. But when I learned the power of presence, of meeting disrespect with silence and stillness, it was like flipping a switch. Suddenly, I wasn't reacting, I was responding. And my response was no response at all. It felt powerful. It felt grounded. It felt like I was finally showing up for myself. So, the next time someone disrespects you, cuts you off, mocks you, or tries to make you feel small, don't flinch. Don't justify. Don't entertain it. Just look at them. Let the silence do the talking. Let them feel the weight of your calm. And let that stillness remind you, you are not here to play small. Sometimes the loudest no is said without making a sound. Sometimes your greatest defense is the look that says, you don't get to shake me. And trust me, they'll get the message. Let me share something most people underestimate. Silence, not as avoidance, but as your most powerful answer. When someone disrespects you, mocks your choices, or throws subtle digs meant to provoke you, what's your first instinct? Most of us want to defend ourselves, clarify our point, or hit back with a clever comeback. We think saying something will somehow restore our power. But here's what I've learned. Silence is not weakness. Silence is a refusal to play their game. See, people who go out of their way to belittle or challenge you are often not looking for real connection. They're looking for reaction. They want to disrupt your peace. They feed off your energy, your attention, your emotions, your need to explain. They throw the bait and wait for you to bite. But when you meet their provocation with nothing, no words, no defense, no recognition, it throws them completely off. It's like dropping their grenade into a field of silence. No explosion, no drama, just quiet. And in that quiet, Something unexpected happens. They're left alone with their own behavior. Let me tell you a story. There was a guy the first used to work with. One of those people who always masked insults as jokes. You know the type. He'd make little remarks about my work in front of others. Laugh it off. Then say, "Relax. I'm just messing with you." At first, I tried to play along. I smiled. I laughed politely. I even tried explaining the logic behind my work, thinking maybe if I gave context, he'd back off. But he didn't. In fact, it only encouraged him, because the more I explained, the more power I gave him. So, one day, he took another shot at me, something smug. Something meant to get a rise, and I did something different. I said nothing. No smile. No sigh. No eye roll. Just silence. I looked at him briefly, raised an eyebrow like I didn't even need to respond, and went right back to what I was doing. That pause, those few seconds of nothing, spoke louder than any comeback ever could. He didn't know what to do with it. There was no fuel for his fire. No energy to feed off. Just the deafening echo of his own insecurity. And that was the last time he tried it. That moment taught me something. When you respond with silence, you're not giving up power, you're keeping it. You're saying, your words aren't worth my energy. Your judgment isn't worth my time. Because here's the truth. Not everyone deserves a reaction. Some people are just fishing for your attention to feel more important than they are. And when you stay silent, you're cutting off their supply. This kind of silence isn't passive. It's a conscious decision, a boundary, a declaration. It's you saying, I don't owe you my explanation. I don't exist to validate your opinion. I protect my peace, even if that means saying nothing at all. The beauty of this is that the more you practice it, the more empowered you feel. You realize you don't have to explain every move, defend every decision, or justify your worth to anyone. You learn to sit with silence like a shield, strong, grounded, and absolutely unshakable. And let's be real, it's not always easy at first. We're conditioned to respond, to defend, to make ourselves understood. But over time, you begin to feel the freedom that comes with choosing silence over reaction. You feel stronger, lighter, in control. Because silence doesn't mean you're ignoring the disrespect. It means you're acknowledging it, and choosing not to let it in. It means you're no longer handing over your emotional energy to people who haven't earned the right to hold it. And here's something powerful to remember. Silence also protects your dignity. It keeps you from saying things you might regret. It keeps you from lowering yourself to someone else's level. It keeps you anchored in who you are. So the next time someone throws a jab, mocks your work, or tries to push your buttons, pause. Don't flinch. Don't defend. Don't engage. Just breathe. Stay still. Say nothing. Let your silence be your answer. Let them sit in it. Because in that space, you are untouchable. And that, my friend, is where your power lives. Let's get honest for a second. How many times have you made a decision, only to be met with a chorus of questions? Why'd you do that? Why didn't you take that job? Why aren't you coming to the event? It's like the moment you step outside of what's considered normal, people start acting like they deserve a full report. As if your life is up for review. As if every choice you make needs to be approved by a committee. But let me tell you something. You don't owe anyone an explanation for how you choose to live your life. Not your family. Not your coworkers. Not even your closest friends. When you constantly explain yourself, you're doing something dangerous. You're putting other people in the judge's seat. You're handing them the gavel and asking them to decide if your choices are valid. And that's a recipe for self-doubt. Here's the kicker. Most of the time, people aren't asking out of genuine curiosity. They're asking because your decision challenges them. Maybe you made a bold move they were too afraid to make. Maybe you're choosing peace when they've only known chaos. Or maybe, just maybe, you remind them of the freedom they haven't given themselves. Let me tell you a story. A few years ago, I walked away from a stable job. Good benefits, decent salary. On paper, it was perfect. But inside, I was restless, unfulfilled. I knew I was meant for something more creative, more aligned with who I really am. So, I made the leap. And the moment people found out, the questions came flying. Why would you leave something so secure? What's your backup plan? Are you sure you're not just being impulsive? At first, I tried to explain. I talked about my vision, my passion, the long nights I'd spent planning this transition. But no matter how much I said, it never felt like enough. They poked holes in every answer, made me second-guess my decision, and left me feeling like I had to defend my dream just to make it real. Then one day, someone asked, "But why would you leave a job like that?" And I simply said, "Because I wanted to." No backstory, no breakdown, just that. And the silence that followed? That was everything. They didn't know what to say. Because I'd taken away the thing they were looking for, control. In that moment, I realized something life-changing. Your reasons don't need to be convincing to anyone but you. The truth is, people will always have opinions. Some will support you. Some will project their fears onto you. And some will criticize simply because your growth makes them uncomfortable. But you don't exist to make other people feel comfortable. You exist to live a life that feels true. When you stop explaining your choices, something powerful happens. You reclaim your autonomy. You stop wasting emotional energy trying to get people on your side. And you start living from the inside out, not the outside in. You give yourself permission to trust your own voice, even when it's quiet. Even when no one else understands it. And let's be clear, this doesn't mean being rude or dismissive. It means recognizing that your choices are yours. And you don't need a permission slip to follow your path. If someone asks why you made a decision, you can smile and say, "Because it felt right for me." That's it. Let the silence carry the rest. You'll be amazed at how freeing that is. Because here's the deeper truth. Confidence doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from knowing you don't need to explain them. The most grounded, powerful people I know don't go around justifying their lives. They walk in alignment. They make moves based on values, not validation. And they understand that peace is more valuable than approval. So here's my challenge to you. The next time someone questions your choices, resist the urge to explain. Don't draft a mini TED Talk in your head. Just stand firm in your decision. Say less. Feel more. Let them wonder. Let them project. Let them sit with their discomfort. Because your life is not a debate. It's a declaration. You are allowed to live boldly. To take risks. To change your mind. To do what's best for you, even when no one else understands. And if all you ever say is, "Because I wanted to," then that's more than enough. Let's be honest. Sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do for yourself is create distance. Not out of spite, Not to be cold or dramatic, but because some people, plain and simple, don't deserve front row seats to your life. We've been taught to forgive endlessly, to keep people close because of time, history, or obligation. But just because someone's been in your life for years doesn't mean they've earned the right to stay. If someone consistently disrespects you, belittles your choices, crosses boundaries, or makes you feel small, you don't have to keep them around. You're not being harsh. You're being honest. Think of your life as a VIP club. Your time, your energy, your mental peace, they're the velvet rope. And you get to decide who gets access. Why would you let someone inside who only drains your spirit? Why would you hand out all access passes to people who treat you like an afterthought? Let me share a story. I used to have a friend who loved to take little jabs at me. Nothing overtly cruel, just constant sarcasm and backhanded compliments. Anytime I shared something I was proud of, they found a way to twist it. Must be nice having all that free time to do passion projects. You sure that's a real job? At first, I brushed it off. That's just their humor. I told myself, maybe I was being too sensitive. But over time, it started to wear me down. I found myself dreading conversations with them, walking on eggshells, mentally bracing for the next snide remark. Even when I wasn't around them, their voice echoed in my head. One day, I realized I didn't have to keep doing this. I didn't owe them unlimited access just because we had history. So I started pulling back. No big confrontation, no dramatic speech, just space. Instead of texting every day, I responded every few days. Instead of making weekly plans, I saw them once a month. And slowly but surely, something shifted. I felt lighter, clearer, freer. The noise faded, and I could finally hear myself again. And in that space, I realized just how toxic the relationship had become. It wasn't just about them being negative, it was about how much I had normalized it. That's the thing. When you're too close to the noise, you forget what silence feels like. When you're always around someone draining, you forget what being restored feels like. Distance gives you perspective. It clears the emotional fog and lets you see the truth. Now, let's be real, this isn't always easy. People will guilt you. They'll say, but they're family. But you've known each other forever. But healing isn't about loyalty to history. It's about loyalty to your future, to your peace, to your growth. Keeping your distance doesn't mean you're angry. It means you care enough about yourself to stop letting the wrong people take up space. And here's the deeper truth. You are not responsible for managing other people's discomfort. You are not required to keep showing up in places where you are constantly disrespected, dismissed, or diminished. Protecting your energy is not rude. It's respectful to yourself. When you remove people who constantly cross the line, you make room for those who will honor your boundaries. You attract relationships that feel safe, kind, reciprocal. You start to bloom again. The freedom that comes from distance? It's real. It's quiet at first, but then it becomes powerful. You find yourself smiling more, breathing easier, trusting your instincts again. And that's when you know, this space wasn't a punishment. It was a gift. So, here's what I want you to remember. Not everyone gets to stay in your inner circle. Access to you is a privilege. And if someone consistently abuses that privilege, you're allowed, without guilt, to take it away. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to apologize for it. You just have to honor what your spirit already knows. Because at the end of the day, choosing distance from those who don't respect you is not cruelty. It's self-respect. It's healing. It's peace. And peace is worth protecting at all costs. Let's talk about something simple, but incredibly powerful: posture. Not just the way you stand, but the way you carry yourself through life. Because sometimes, the most effective response to disrespect isn't a word or a stare. It's how you hold your body. It's how you walk into a room. It's the way your shoulders stay back, your chin stays level, and your energy says, "I know exactly who I am." See, people who disrespect you often count on one thing: that you'll shrink. They want you to lower your eyes, slouch your shoulders, second-guess your worth. Why? Because your confidence threatens them. Your presence challenges the false power they think they have. But when you walk tall, head held high, calm in your expression, steady in your breath, you send a message that's impossible to ignore. You don't get to define me. I do. I learned this lesson the hard way. There was someone in my life who never missed a chance to make little digs, disguised as jokes, of course. Always with a smirk, always just enough edge to make it sting. I used to dread seeing them. I'd tense up, avoid eye contact, and laugh things off just to keep the peace. I thought if I didn't react, they'd eventually stop. But it didn't work, because I wasn't silent with confidence, I was silent with fear. And they could sense that. Then one day, I made a choice, a simple one. I decided, I will not shrink anymore. I walked in with my shoulders back. I made eye contact, not with aggression, but with self-assurance. And every time they threw out one of their little comments, I didn't flinch. I didn't fake a laugh. I just held my posture, smiled calmly, and carried on with what I was doing. And you know what happened? They stopped. It didn't happen all at once. But over time, the digs faded, the smirks disappeared. It was as if they realized, this doesn't work anymore. Not because I said anything, but because my energy had changed. That's the thing about holding your head high, it creates a force field. Not a wall, not a weapon, just a quiet shield that says, I respect myself, and you will too. People can feel when you've stepped into your worth. They can sense when you're no longer seeking validation or shrinking to fit their comfort. And it unsettles them, because now, they're the ones who feel small. Here's the deeper truth. Confidence disrupts control. Those who rely on disrespect to feel powerful lose that power the moment you stop playing small. Holding your head high isn't arrogance. It's not about pretending to be perfect or better than anyone else. It's about refusing to let someone else's words decide how you feel about yourself. You don't need to argue. You don't need to prove them wrong. You just need to remember who you are, and stand in that. Your posture, your energy, your presence, they all speak for you long before your words ever will. And when you move through the world with that quiet assurance, people notice, they respect it, or they back off. Either way, you win. And here's what's beautiful. The more you hold your head high, the more natural it becomes. You stop carrying the weight of other people's opinions. You stop needing to over-explain or over-apologize. You start walking like someone who knows they belong, because you do. There's power in that stillness. There's healing in that kind of presence. And there's something deeply unshakable about a person who holds their ground with grace. So, if someone throws a snide remark, Let it pass. If they smirk, let them. You don't need to meet their energy. Just hold your head high. Look them in the eye if you must. And move forward. You're not ignoring them. You're choosing yourself. You're choosing your peace, your power, your truth. At the end of the day, people may try to test you, provoke you, pull you down, but they can't take what you don't hand over. So stand tall, not for show, but for strength, for healing, for self-respect. Hold your head high, not because you have something to prove, but because you have nothing to hide. And that's what unshakable confidence really looks like. Respect doesn't begin with other people. It begins with you. It's not something you wait for. It's something you decide to embody through your presence, your energy, and your boundaries. When you stay silent at the right moments, you're not avoiding conflict. You're showing strength. When you create distance from people who constantly disrespect you, you're not being cold. You're protecting your peace. When you walk with your head held high, you're not being arrogant. You're standing in your truth. All of these choices, quiet, distance, posture, send a clear message to the world. This is how I deserve to be treated. And the moment you stop seeking approval, the moment you stop asking permission to live the life that feels right for you, that's when everything shifts. Because that's the moment you become the most liberated version of yourself. You're no longer shrinking to fit in. You're no longer explaining your worth. You're no longer handing out free access to people who don't honor it. Instead, you're living aligned with your values, your dignity, your peace. And that alignment? That's where your real power lives. So let me ask you something real. Have you ever been in a situation where someone didn't respect you? Where you felt small, overlooked, or dismissed until one day you chose differently? I want to hear about it. Drop your story in the comments below. Let's start a conversation about boundaries, self-worth, and choosing yourself. Because when one person decides to live with self-respect, it gives others permission to do the same. And that's how we shift the standard together.